St. Thomas Aquinas was a Dominican priest who lived from 1225 to 1274 Anno Domini. After his death, St. Thomas Aquinas was declared a Catholic saint, a doctor of the Church, and is widely regarded as the greatest philosopher of all time. We will be looking at a few of his quotes from a work of St. Thomas Aquinas entitled De Regno, which is Latin for About the Kingship. King Hugh II of Cyprus asked St. Thomas Aquinas for advice on how to rule wisely as a king. Unfortunately, King Hugh II died before St. Thomas finished writing De Regno, so De Regno was left only partially completed. Without further ado, let us examine De Regno. De Regno, Chapter 2, Different Kinds of Rule. Section 11. If an unjust government is carried on by one man alone, who seeks his own benefit from rule, and not the good of the multitude subject to him, such a ruler is called a tyrant, a word derived from strength, because he oppresses by might instead of ruling by justice. Thus, among the ancients, all-powerful men were called tyrants. If an unjust government is carried on, not by one, but by several, and if they be few, it is called an oligarchy, that is, the rule of a few. This occurs when a few, who differ from the tyrant only by the fact that they are more than one, oppress the people by means of their wealth. If, finally, the bad government is carried on by the multitude, it is called a democracy, i.e., control of the populace, which comes about when the plebeian people, by force of numbers, oppress the rich. In this way, the whole people will be as one tyrant. In like manner, we must divide just governments. If the government is administered by many, it is given the name common to all forms of government, viz., polity, as for instance when a group of warriors exercise dominion over a city or province. If it is administered by a few men of virtue, this kind of government is called an aristocracy, i.e., noble governance, or governance by noble men, who for this reason are called the optimates. And if a just government is in the hands of one man alone, he is properly called a king. Wherefore, the Lord says by the mouth of Ezekiel, quote, "My servant David shall be king over them, and all of them shall have one shepherd." End quote. From this, it is clearly shown that the idea of king implies that he be one man who is chief and that he be a shepherd, seeking the common good of the multitude and not his own. It is plain, therefore, from what has been said, that a king is one who rules the people of one city or province and rules them for the common good. Wherefore Solomon says, Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 8, "The king rules over all the land subject to him." End quote. End of quotes from chapter 2. Now beginning summary. St. Thomas says that a just government brings about the common good. If a government only works for the satisfaction of the ruler, or rulers, plural, then the government is unjust. St. Thomas then briefly examines 6 different forms of government. St. Thomas classifies 3 of these forms of government as just, and 3 of these forms of governments as unjust. The 3 just forms of government are the kingship, aristocracy, and polity. St. Thomas defines a kingship as the rule of one man who tries to bring about the common good. St. Thomas defines aristocracy as a group of nobility who rule for the good of their subjects. The form of government where many rule, St. Thomas calls a, quote, polity, as for instance when a group of warriors exercise dominion over a city or province, end quote. Now let us examine the unjust governments. St. Thomas defines the opposite of a king as a tyrant, that is, one man who rules for the good of himself, not the good of his people. St. Thomas defines the opposite of an aristocracy as an oligarchy, that is, a few rich people who use their wealth to oppress society at large. The opposite of a polity, St. Thomas defines as a, quote, democracy, in which St. Thomas says the majority of the people oppress the rich and become as one tyrant. De Regno, Chapter 3. Whether it is more expedient for a city or province to be ruled by one man or by many. Section 17. This question may be considered first from the viewpoint of the purpose of government. The aim of any ruler should be directed towards securing the welfare of that which he undertakes to rule. The duty of the pilot, for instance, is to preserve his ship amidst the perils of the sea and to bring it unharmed to the port of safety. Now, the welfare and safety of a multitude, formed into a society, lies in the preservation of its unity, which is called peace. If this is removed, the benefit of a social life is lost, and moreover, the multitude in its disagreement becomes a burden to itself. The chief concern of the ruler of a multitude, therefore, is to procure the unity of peace. It is not even legitimate for him to deliberate whether he shall establish peace in the multitude subject to him, just as a physician does not deliberate whether he shall heal the sick man in charge to him. For no one should deliberate about an end which he is obliged to seek, but only about the means to attain that end. Wherefore, the Apostle, having commended the unity of the faithful people, says, quote, "Be ye careful to keep the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace." End quote. Thus, the more efficacious a government is in keeping the unity of peace, the more useful it will be. For we call that more useful which leads directly to the end. Now it is manifest that what is itself, one can more efficaciously bring about unity than several, just as the most efficacious cause of heat is that which, by its nature, is hot. Therefore, the rule of one man is more useful than the rule of many. Furthermore, it is evident that several persons could by no means preserve the stability of the community if they totally disagreed. For union is necessary among them if they are to rule at all. Several men, for instance, could not pull a ship in one direction unless joined together in some fashion. Now, several are said to be united, according as they come closer to being one. So one man rules better than several men who come near being one. This is also evident from experience. For provinces or cities which are not ruled by one person are torn with dissensions and tossed about without peace, so that the complaint seems to be filled which the Lord uttered through the prophet, Jeremiah chapter 12, verse 10, quote, "Many pastors have destroyed my vineyard." End quote. On the other hand, provinces and cities, which are ruled under one king, enjoy peace, flourish in peace, and delight in prosperity. Hence, the Lord by his prophets promises to his people, as a great reward, that he will give them one head and that, quote, "one prince will be in the midst of them." End quote. Ezekiel chapter 34, verse 12, Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 21. End of quotes from chapter 3. Now beginning summary. To sum this up, St. Thomas Aquinas is highlighting the great importance of peace and unity among the people of a country. St. Thomas says that if the people of the country are united, the country will flourish. However, if the people of the country are divided, the country will be torn apart by infighting. St. Thomas says that often when one man is in control of the government, the people can gather together behind this one man. St. Thomas says a country ruled by many different men will be chock full of disunity. These leaders will fight over these differing views. Furthermore, these multiple leaders will create factions. St. Thomas says this results in both the leaders of the country and the regular citizens of the country constantly fighting each other. The citizens of the country will not be united at all, and the country as a whole will not have great success when it comes to progressing as a nation. De Regno, Chapter 6. That it is a lesser evil when a monarchy turns into tyranny than when an aristocracy becomes corrupt. Section 36. When a choice is to be made between two things, from both of which danger impends, surely that one should be chosen from which the lesser evil follows. Now, lesser evil follows from the corruption of a monarchy than from the corruption of an aristocracy. Group government, polyarchy, most frequently breeds dissension. This dissension runs counter to the good of peace, which is the principal social good. A tyrant, on the other hand, does not destroy this good. Rather, he obstructs one of the other individual interests of his subjects, unless, of course, there be an excess of tyranny, and the tyrant rages against the whole community. Monarchy is therefore to be preferred to polyarchy, although either form of government might become dangerous. Further, that from which great dangers may follow, more frequently is, it would seem, the more to be avoided. Now, considerable dangers to the multitude follow more frequently from polyarchy than from monarchy. There is a great chance that, where there are many rulers, one of them will abandon the intention of the common good than that it will be abandoned when there is but one ruler. When any one among several rulers turns aside from the pursuit of the common good, danger of internal strife threatens the group, because, when the chiefs quarrel, dissension will follow in the people. When, on the other hand, one man is in command, he more often keeps to governing for the sake of the common good. Should he not do so, it does not immediately follow that he also proceeds to the total oppression of his subjects. This, of course, would be the excess of tyranny and the worst wickedness in government, as has been shown above. The dangers, then, arising from a polyarchy are more to be guarded against than those arising from a monarchy. Moreover, in point of fact, a polyarchy deviates into tyranny not less but perhaps more frequently than a monarchy. When, on account of there being many rulers, dissensions arise in such a government, it often happens that the power of one preponderates, and he then usurps the government of the multitude for himself. This, indeed, may be clearly seen from history. There has hardly ever been a polyarchy that did not end in tyranny. The best illustration of this fact is the history of the Roman Republic. It was, for a long time, administered by the magistrates, but then the animosities, dissensions, and the civil wars arose, and it fell into the power of the most cruel tyrants. In general, if one carefully considers what has happened in the past and what is happening in the present, he will discover that more men have held tyrannical sway in lands previously ruled by many rulers than in those ruled by one. The strongest objection why monarchy, although it is, quote, the best form of government, end quote, is not agreeable to the people, is that, in fact, it may deviate into tyranny. Yet, tyranny is wont to occur not less, but more frequently on the basis of a polyarchy than on the basis of a monarchy. It follows that it is, in any case, more expedient to live under one king than under the rule of several men. End of quotes from chapter 6, now beginning summary. To briefly sum this up, St. Thomas says a government ruled by many people is far more likely to abandon the pursuit of the common good. There is a high chance the majority of the rulers will abandon helping the common good and will instead become self-serving. Thanks to these facts, most governments ruled by many men sooner or later become tyrannical. In a government with one ruler, there is roughly a 50-50 chance as to whether the monarch will be good or evil. This is why every democracy in the history of the world has eventually ended up becoming tyrannical in one way or another. The monarchies, on the other hand, have had mixed results. Furthermore, governments such as democracies also usually destroy the peace of a country quite easily due to the dissension caused by having multiple rulers in one government. When governments with multiple rulers destroy the peace, they destroy the peace for everyone underneath them. No one is spared. Monarchs typically do not destroy this peace quite as much. When monarchs do destroy the peace, they usually don't destroy it for all their subjects, just for select portions of their subjects. That sums up the quotes from De Regno for this video. St. Thomas Aquinas also writes a good deal in De Regno about the differences between monarchs and tyrants. St. Thomas explains how the rule of tyrants will soon collapse, while the rule of monarchs will last. I can make a video covering St. Thomas's explanations of tyrants versus monarchs if there is enough interest. I highly recommend you read De Regno in its entirety, and I have attached a free online copy of De Regno in the description. The copy of De Regno also shows the original writings of De Regno in Latin. Latin is the official language of the Catholic Church. Exorcists have told Catholics that prayers said in Latin are more efficacious during exorcisms than prayers said in English. St. Thomas Aquinas wrote in Latin and celebrated the traditional Latin Mass as he was a Catholic priest. Latin is a more direct language than English, and many prominent scholars have said it is impossible to fully understand St. Thomas Aquinas' work without reading his works in Latin. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.